Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathleen Degnan. I'm a sister of the Congregation of Notre Dame, and I'm the founding director of the Degnan Institute for Earth and Spirit, which is hosting this wonderful offering that we will be doing on the first Monday of every month. And this little brainchild sprang up during one of my monthly coffees with Danny, where we come together to just do soul talk with each other. And it's always lately circling around this mystery of aging and eldering. And as we spoke into it, we found that we were really empowering and encouraging each other and supporting each other. And we thought this would be a wonderful offering to be able to open it to the 55 or more of us who are on this session tonight. So it is really my joy to be welcoming Dr. Danny Martin, a dear, dear friend for a long, long time, and our other colleague, Carlos Montenegro, if I said that right, to be able to guide us into some deep reflection. I think many of you know Danny Martin. He has been a friend and colleague for many decades, and he remains in these circles as an exceptional and extraordinary animator of authentic life, of deep conversation, and integral reflection. His own work is as a resource person and facilitator for a number of communities and organizations of healing and health. And he is the originating master, so to speak, of mindfulness dialogue, which Danny will share with us this evening. And it will be our way, it will be the means, the modality by which we come to do our sharing on what eldering in grace might look like as we continue on in it. So I welcome you, Danny, and I welcome you, Carlos. Thank you for your assistance this evening. And I welcome all of you into what I hope will be a monthly enrichment for all of us. Danny.
Thank you so much. And as you said, as Kathleen said, a colleague for a long time, which gives you one sort of aspect of why we're doing this. We're all in that wonderful period of eldering right now, and it's an ambitious theme to take on, but for me, essential at a personal as well as a collective level. So what I thought we would do this evening is just get ourselves started, because clearly there's no quick fix. There's no fix. There's a process of integration here that we're talking about. But we could start this evening, I think, by coming to some shared understanding about what it is that we're trying to do and how to address it. I will also give you a little sense of our method and our model, mindfulness dialogue. Mindfulness dialogue is hardly my creation. There's so many of you that have been involved in this process. And it brings together two things that we're all familiar with: mindfulness, which is the art of presence, and dialogue, which is the art of participating in the emergence of meaning. And when they come together, they generate, I think, a powerful synergy. And it's that we will need to address something as fundamental as this. As a model, mindfulness dialogue has 3 stages, and we will follow those tonight, and we will learn as we go. It's in some ways it's very obvious. In some ways, we'll just sort of add our skills and our awareness of this as we participate. But the three stages are connecting, exploring, and discovering. And I think they're self-explanatory, but I'll sort of refer to each of them as we step into it. But let me first set the scene for this somewhat daunting challenge of eldering in grace. And I'll use a poem by Mary Oliver that sets the scene for our conversation on eldering in grace. Let me share the screen so that you can follow. Let me see if that works. That's not it. There we go. So this is Mary Oliver. So many of you are familiar with her. Another year gone, leaving everywhere its rich, spiced residues, vines, leaves, the uneaten fruits crumbling damply in the shadows, unmattering back from the particular island of this summer. This now, that now is nowhere except underfoot, mouldering in that black subterranean castle of unobservable mysteries, roots and sealed seeds and the wanderings of water. This I try to remember when time's measure painfully chafes. For instance, when autumn flares out at the last, boisterous, and like us, longing to stay, how everything lives, shifting from one bright vision to another forever in these momentary pastures. Well, let me develop and draw out some of the wonderful insights of Mary Oliver on aging and eldering. First, there is the aging, the uneaten fruits crumbling damply in the shadows, with the loss of standing even or identity that aging can bring, unmattering back to the world beyond death that the poet describes as that black subterranean castle of unobservable mysteries. But then there's the eldering, the realization of how everything lives, shifting from one bright vision to another forever in these momentary pastures. Eldering is the part that lasts, the wisdom that is gleaned from aging and then handed on. This, says the poet, is what we have to remember when we find the challenges of aging, like letting go even when we long to stay, bringing us to the edge sometimes of despair. You know, interestingly, the psychologist Erik Erikson called this stage of aging integration versus despair, highlighting that, as in every stage of life, there are challenges to be faced in order to grow and move through the stage. It is humbling and a little disconcerting that despair would be the challenge of this last stage of our journey, but I get it, and I'm sure you do. Eldering in grace, the topic has me intrigued, for I am ready. Personally, I turned 76 this month and have already had a taste of some of the predictable physical challenges, but also some of the joys. I have 6 grandchildren with all that this implies. I've always tried to face life squarely and want to do so here, though I must admit it was easier to do this when I was 20. This stage of life is different, for it has an urgency and a sense of finality even to it. I think we're also ready for eldering in grace at a collective level, for America is aging even as the rest of the world grows younger. Some might add that we are an aging species. Articles and books abound about how in 10 years' time there will be more old people than children in this country. Moreover, these older people, us, are more vigorous than previous generations, perhaps, and will want to stay involved in public life, as our political world demonstrates clearly today. This will have all kinds of implications from healthcare to housing. But to return to the poem, life is forever, moment to moment. Aging is part of this grace-filled forever. But this truth has to be absorbed, distilled, and integrated. This is eldering, I think. And we all need to be reminded of this when time's measure painfully chafes. And that's what elders do. Not so much with the usual wisdom of books, but the wisdom of experience, like my grandma did for me. Grandma was my mother's mother, and she certainly impacted my deepest, truest self.
It's better than it was.
What is it about a grandmother or a grandfather in a similar way that has this kind of impact? We sometimes joke about grandparents being able to relate differently than parents because of the absence of responsibilities, or perhaps more accurately, because of different responsibilities. You know, it was clear to me that my grandma simply loved me no matter what I did or didn't do. There was also a little spoiling involved, like the extra treats of candy or cookies hidden in secret places when we were alone. But there is another thing that surfaces now that I'd never really adverted to before with my grandmother, and that is a kind of vulnerability. My grandma would tell me things that you didn't usually hear from an adult, about her concerns, perhaps, or little stories from her own childhood, and sometimes even little things about my own mother, her daughter, as a girl, that served to humanize and soften things. My grandma was also my first encounter with deeper meaning and spirituality. We were Catholic, but from grandma, I would hear stories that used the terms of Christianity, like God and spirits and heaven, but in ways that were mixed with what I might call at this stage older mythologies. For example, on All Souls Night, grandma would leave out food and drink for the spirits, including a glass of Guinness, hearkening back to older pre-Christian traditions. And by the way, the Guinness was always gone in the morning for some reason. From my grandmother, I received a world of spirituality that has influenced me ever since, both this neo-Christian world as well as the former world of church. Recently, I came across the first prayer book she gave me and smiled at the ancient memories that surfaced in the smells it released from its crinkly pages. She also introduced me to death in a way that felt natural. She would tell me about the way she was feeling. My old bones are aching, she would say, but also how she wasn't long for this world, which never sounded ominous or even sad, but rather simply part of life's process. My grandma was clearly my first experience of what I would later understand as elderhood. An older person who has become wise and loving through the experience and learning of the aging process. So hopefully that sets the scene. I'm going to leave this poem on the screen, and maybe I'll put it into the chat room if it doesn't work that way, and invite you into a mindfulness dialogue connecting, the first stage of a mindfulness dialogue, to help us access the part of ourselves that is beginning to experience aging, perhaps for a while, and hoping that it's not simply decline and death, but part of something more, like an eldering that can direct our continuing journey. So what I'm going to do is lead you in a mindfulness meditation, just for a few moments to settle. And you'll adjust to this. This is not your typical kind of Zoom conversation, because we're going to break up into pairs after this mindfulness exercise, where you'll have an opportunity to share your own thoughts that were stirred by the poem or by things that I've said about your own experience of eldering. And we'll spend about 8 or 9 minutes in the breakout room, and then we'll come back and I'll explain a little bit more. I don't want to overload. So let me invite you to sit back. Feel your back against the chair and your feet on the floor. Put your hands on your lap heavy. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. And take 3 deep breaths. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And breathe normally. And where you notice tension in your body, and you probably do, bring your attention to that place. Breathe into that place and breathe out the tension. Now breathe normally and begin to notice your body just for a moment. Your feet on the ground, your ankles and shins, your knees, your thighs, your back where you meet the chair, your spine, your shoulders, your arms and hands, your abdomen, your chest and lungs, your heart, your neck, your face, your head. Just be present. Breathe into your body. Breathe in life. And let me invite you to access your own experiences of aging, perhaps a challenging health issue, or the loss of someone close. Maybe retirement and the sudden restructuring of time and identity it brings. See if you can be in those feelings. Maybe a memory of an elder that you may not have understood as such until now, like my grandma. And we'll stay in this for just a few moments so that you can get in touch with that self. Take another deep breath of gratitude for life. And when you're ready, if your eyes were closed, open your eyes. I'm going to ask Carlos now to break us into pairs. So you'll find yourself perhaps with a stranger, perhaps with a friend. And I invite you to share what stirs in you, your experience. What brought you here might be a broader way of asking the question. What brought you? What are you here for? What are you hoping to get from this? Carlos, if you could do that. And we will invite you back in about 8 or 9 minutes. So give each other a little bit of time each to hear each other's stories.
Sorry about that. Definitely what you shared about your grandmother. I felt the same about my grandma. And I'm just thinking about things that I'm experiencing. I'm a dance teacher and how my body is, not how it used to be. And the voice and everything, and how I work with younger people and younger colleagues, and just trying to shifting that as being more of a mentor as opposed to like running the show, And then I think about my mom and and my stepdad, and just how they're eldering, and I just think this is so helpful to just think about how our parents are going through. We're all eldering, but I think about
That's so right.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
Mm.
And just a new appreciation for my parents, and respect, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. Well, you got my little sense of what it's about, so I won't bore you with more because it'll be all kind of coming at you. But where are you living, Mary? I can be so
I'm in New York City.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'm up in northern Westchester.
Okay.
So it's
Nice.
not too far away.
Yeah.
I'm from Ireland. I suppose I should have said that, but it's obvious enough.
Yeah. Where in Ireland are you from?
Belfast.
Okay.
That
Nice.
has its own story, as you can imagine, too. And
Yes. Yes.
conflict, which is unfortunately so reflective of what's happening
Yeah.
to us today. And that's breaks my
Yes. Yeah. Um, I know I have ancestors from Cork.
from Cork. Oh,
Yeah.
I went to graduate school in Cork
Oh, nice.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
As we can say now, in the last century.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's so beautiful there. I've been to Ireland.
It is beautiful
Yeah.
in its own wonderful way. But
You visit there?
I do, of course. I mean, every year mostly, and COVID sort of did disrupt a little bit and
Yes. Yeah.
lost the thing for a while, but we'll go back certainly next spring and
Nice. Yeah.
take it from there. And again, the reasons for going back then begin to change. The older generation drops off.
Yes. Yes.
These
Yeah.
are real things, as we're saying. It's
Yeah. And my dad passed away last August.
yeah.
So that was a close, you know, uh, my grandmother, when my grandma passed, that was big. And then, and then my dad, of course, that was a big one. Um,
Well,
so
there's something kind of fundamental about when a parent
yes.
dies.
Yeah.
Please God, we're preserved from losing our children before us or whatever, because that doesn't seem so natural. But what's natural?
You're right.
It really embraces everything, I suppose. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so let me just give a little note to Carlos to see that.
Yeah.
I suppose it took a little while for people to get on board, and
Right.
we're ironing out the the chinks.
Yes.
And so
Yeah. I think I've, do you know James Robinson?
yes, he's down at
Yeah.
Iona College. Yeah.
Yes, he's the one I attended. I was late to a Corpus Christi church in
Yeah.
Morningside. They had a session on Robin Wall Kimmerer's book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reading Sweetgrass or something. Yeah.
Yes, such a beautiful writer.
A beautiful writer indeed.
So yeah, he shared Kathleen's information with me. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mary. Good to talk with you.
You too.
Oh, we're all coming back. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but let me explain what I have in mind. Clearly, I hope that you had the beginnings of a real conversation with someone and started that process. Normally, in a smaller Zoom, we would have reports from everyone, or as many as wanted, but clearly that would keep us here for the rest of the night. So what we're trying to do is build a sense of an emerging collective voice. And we're going to do that by having a representative group of 4 to represent symbolically the 4 directions of north, south, east, and west. And so I'm inviting you to, if you are one who volunteers to speak, to see yourself mandated as speaking on behalf of this emerging community. And I invite the rest of us, if you don't speak, to see this as your emerging voice, and perhaps your time will come to speak in the larger group. But I think every voice, the purpose here of mindfulness dialogue is to ensure that everyone's voice is heard in the small groups at least, and then our own collective voice begins to emerge out of this process. So with that in mind, could you hit the little reactions, put your hand up, and between myself and Carlos, we'll see who has their hand up and invite you to share what went on for you. You don't have to give a report on what happened in the breakout room, but really where you are right now, what's beginning to emerge for you. So Linda Conroy, maybe could Linda speak up? I can see one.
Danny, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Oh, great, great. I'm part of a threesome here in Bellingham, Washington, but I am speaking for myself. I was tremendously grateful when I saw this email from Kathleen, because it's a wondering very hot in my soul, I want to say, because I'm 75. I have a few months ago was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I'm very active. I'm part of facilitating and running a small spirituality center. And the cry of the earth, Pope Francis' recent scolding, Te Deum, are very demanding and pulsating in me. But I've made it clear that I'm not 21 and I'm not a politician. But I long to know how to move into the wisdom of eldering, which is a different way of knowing what is mine to do.
That's wonderful, Linda. Thank you so much. And that's exactly, you modeled how we want to begin to hear from voices that are reflecting our collective voice. So anyone else like to offer? And by the way, someone said, give us a time frame. It'll be 90 minutes that we will spend on this conversation this evening. Hopefully we don't go over time. So another voice. Just raise your hand, hit that little reaction if you would, and then I can call you out. So Laurie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this incredible opportunity. The thing I'll share that I shared in our small group was something an Indigenous elder shared with me about 10 years ago. And she said, if we're old enough to live long enough, we have two choices. We can be an older or an elder. And older's guilt and whine and demand and complain. And elders contribute. They see the whole community. They give and cooperate. And I've just been thinking about that. When I was about 30, I looked at everyone 10 to 60 years older than myself. And I said, who do I want to look like at those ages or be like? And that's what I'm looking for now. My grandparents, I was very lucky. They lived a long time, but they didn't share about any of this, any of the things. I knew they loved me, but they didn't talk. So I'm looking for that. And I'm just grateful. And one thing is, since my mother died 3 years ago at age 91, it's definitely hit me differently. It's more real. And I asked her once, she had three funerals in a month. I said, how do you cope with that grief? But she didn't answer. Well, I guess by processing and being very busy in the things. Luckily, I have my passions. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Laurie. And some of these themes that you've touched on, of course, are things that we will touch over time, clearly, because this is not something we just kind of mend or fix or whatever. Another voice. Think of the north, Now we've heard from the south. What about the east? Mike, go for it, Mike. Let us hear. You're muted, I think.
Yes. Well, Danny, when you were talking about our aging population, and I shared this with Mary in our chat room, it struck me that that's true of the collective West, of Europe and the United States especially. We are old people, or we're an aging population. But the people in the global South are younger.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in Gaza are extremely young. And the irony strikes me that what you have there in Gaza are old people making decisions about killing young people and babies and those who give them life, women. And that just makes me so sad that at our age, and I'm 83 now, at our age, this is happening. We have an old man in Netanyahu, an old man in Biden, making these decisions to kill children and women. And as I say, it's very, very sad.
Thank you, Mike. A powerful statement that all of us probably resonate with in so many levels. So many levels. Thank you. Nancy Davis, I know that there's some more, Anne and Bill, and we're going to hold you to the next little stage of exploring. But Nancy, our fourth voice.
You want my thoughts?
I can hear
Now,
you. Go for it.
in our discussion, we were grateful for the term elderly. It was new, and it says a lot to us. And for me personally, this discussion, you talked about your grandparents. Well, at 95, I'm I'm the matriarch for the whole clan. And that's a totally different experience, a responsibility, which is not hard. But anyway, it's a whole view of this aging when you're from that point of view.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. That was wise in itself, too. So let me just call on us, invite you to notice where we are now, even after a short period of time like this, even after minimal sharing. To connect like this in a mindfulness dialogue way is to create a space, maybe where something new can happen. It's not a problem-solving space exactly. It's more of a generative, creative space, a container where something new can be cooked up and born. So that's our process. And now in that space, we want to step into stage 2, which in mindfulness dialogue we call exploring, where our purpose is to try to deepen our understanding, not only of this theme, but of each other and of ourselves, by the way. I'll begin with the theme and then invite you to explore with each other in a little moment. So listen again, I'm going to offer a kind of reflection on aging and eldering. Clearly, they're not the same thing, but they are related. So while aging does not necessarily lead to wisdom, the wisdom of elderhood, there can be no eldering without aging. So aging in its many forms, like ripening, does involve a kind of dying, perhaps. I was reminded recently of how good whiskey is created through an aging process. Typical Irishman, right? You know, interestingly, the process happens in a different container, a wooden cask, rather than a bottle. The bottle is perhaps a metaphor for the more functional stage of our lives. But getting to deeper levels of distillation requires different conditions and a different container that enables a kind of resting, absorbing, and integration. Sometimes a little blending can help bring out new and unexpected flavors, but the essential thing is that the conditions for this aging and eldering to new depths require skills and practices as well as good intention. So let me share another piece, a poem by William Stafford. Let me see if I can get this one up. There we go. He's an American poet, some of you may be familiar with. And I think he's working with this relationship between aging, which is a given and is unavoidable, and eldering, which he sees as holding on to something essential that we've always known, but that is also deepened in the very process. It's called the way it is. He says, there's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. We all have a sense of what he's talking about here, I'd imagine, the thread, though we might describe it in different ways. On the one hand, it never changes, this thread, though our perception of it and our understanding of it certainly does. I might describe this thread as myself, my true, authentic, original self. Like when you look in the mirror, you see the same self as you did when you were a child, even as aging takes its toll on our bodies, right? On the other hand, this self does grow in the sense of emerge or find its voice. The Caribbean poet Derek Walcott speaks of the stranger who was yourself, meaning that we can also forget or lose touch with this self, let go of the thread. Perhaps, in fact, the journey of a life is about constantly coming back to the essential truth of who we are. I think the implication is that life, the aging process, is ultimately a return to myself, and that eldering is this heightened awareness, this distillation of my true spirit. The poem draws out the process, having to explain to others who you are, the people who wonder about what you are pursuing. And this is not easy, for it's hard for others to see. As a result, sometimes it even becomes hard for me to see and to remember. But it's our lifeline, this self. For while you hold it, you can't get lost, no matter what happens. And things do happen to all of us. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. This is the way of all life, for everyone, no matter the circumstances. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. But in a strange way, I find this comforting because it suggests that real success in life, ripening, distilling, integration, is not about what you have or do, not about your circumstances, not even about the obvious things like health, happiness, peace, abundance, or their opposites like sickness, sadness, conflict, poverty. For nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. In the end, it is about never letting go of the thread. Of course, there's another side to this never letting go that is not about simply holding on, though that may be all you can do in a lifetime. When I think of the tragedies that people live with. But I think following the thread, as the poem says at the beginning, is a proactive process that consists of giving everything you have to life. Though this giving may in fact be more of a giving away, in the sense of letting go of the illusions that accumulate in everyone's journey. This self does not need the accumulations, the outdated assumptions, the old habits that cling to the self in every life journey. Perhaps the goal, as we noted, is always a return. As one mystic put it, to a condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. One of the first gifts I received from my wife, Anne, was a framed piece from T.S. Eliot's 4 quartets that has surfaced time and time again over the years. Most of you know it. He says, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." There it is again, Stafford's thread. our true self, which never ages, even as the body which contains it does. And our journey, our ceaseless exploration, ends back with this, where we started in a sense, and yet different. It is this difference that eldering finds in a kind of second naivete, not Shakespeare's second childishness and mere oblivion, but knowing the place as if for the first time. We've all had a taste of this, like seeing someone as if for the first time with new eyes, like when we fall in love. Let me offer you Stafford's poem again, but this time as a catalyst to inspire your exploration. Carlos will break us into pairs again. And we'll invite you, I'll invite you to listen to the poem this time, not critically, like a critique of a poem, but as an inspiration, a revelation, for that is what it is. Perhaps a word or a phrase will touch you. And it's this that I want you to share with each other in the breakout rooms. So here's the poem once again. And pause in a mindfulness way and let in the words. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. You don't ever let go of the thread. So see if you can speak spontaneously to each other without thinking too much, without contrivance, as it were. Trust the connection that we've made with each other already, even a little bit, and let's see if it fosters deeper mutual understanding, like the deeper connection we created. So, Carlos, let's try it again. There's always going to be glitches with this, I understand, until we get this technology right. But you'll find yourself in a breakout room, perhaps with the same person, perhaps with a different one. And I'll put the poem into the chat room in case you need it. Mary, did the same thing happen to you again? You got...
Yes.
And Linda also. Two Lindas. Well, I hope it wasn't too lonely sitting in the big room.
No, it was fine.
We will work out. I think what happens with Zoom, there may be limited number of breakout rooms that you can make. It's constantly expanding, and there's a lot of us on this Zoom.
Yes.
Carlos and myself actually are working to bring mindfulness dialogue to scale. And believe it or not, we're beginning to use AI in its more positive ways to listen to the breakout rooms and summarize them as a way of making sure that every voice and every perspective gets into the conversation. So we're developing code to make that happen. And Zoom has already gone down that road a little bit, but not sufficiently. So
that's great. Good, definitely good use of AI. Yeah.
And how is this going for you? Just let me ask Linda, just up here on the Linda Suzman.
Well, it's going well, Danny. I mean, this is it's very joyous actually to meet with a group of people who have these themes as the threads that they're following right now.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful dialogue with Susan in our first breakout room, and I just wasn't ready to just go on to another breakout room.
Oh, good. So it was your choice. That's fine.
It was my choice to stay.
That's grand.
And yeah, and I'm just very intrigued to meet people from all over the country and maybe beyond who are feeling as passionate about this as I do.
That's so good.
Who are both dealing in our experiential lives with the very distinct challenges and sometimes very tasking challenges of aging and facing death.
Yeah.
But at the same time are trying to find the opportunity and widen our awareness of that opportunity that we have. I mean, there's got to be some reason there's so many of us old people on the earth and growing in number all the time.
Yeah.
Right now, we must have something to bring, and I certainly want to bring it.
And that's also the impulse that I hear in so many people. Not only, is there a growing number, but there's a real desire to bring something.
Yes. It's one of my favorite writers and thinkers about this. I got a Canadian fellow named Stephen Jenkinson, who wrote the book Die Wise that some of you may have read. And he speaks of our cultures as in the West, particularly, as being grief illiterate and death phobic. And I feel like this boomer generation has changed culture through every phase of life that we've passed through. And now we're passing through aging and dying. And I think we are going to become less grief illiterate, less death phobic as the result of what we're all doing. But it's really nice to have a group of people to share with and to learn from, because there's no recipes here.
No recipes and no easy fixes, I was saying. In 10 or 15 years, I think 90% of Medicare recipients will be boomers. So it is the generation that is changing the demographics, and with all its implications. So let's look to that. Hi, Joe. So I'm not sure if we're all back yet. I'll just give it another few minutes. I just wanted to acknowledge to some people, one or two only didn't go to breakouts this time, but it was their choice. They felt, they wanted to savor or be quiet rather than chat. And all of that is part of our creating this friendship, this relationship, as we explore something that's really, really important, it seems. So in the same way, let me say again, the notion of a representative group. The Native American people often would talk about having a representative group that would speak on behalf of seven generations, 3 in the past, 3 in the future, and the present generation. So when we come together like this, if we're serious about it, we can see ourselves as speaking on behalf of, as representing. So think of that responsibility as we create our collective voice, give voice to it, so to speak. So anyone who would like to speak now, again, it may be what happened in your group. It doesn't matter. It's what's stirring in you that's important. Raise your hand with that little thing. You can see it down at the bottom of the screen. And I think it lets you, I'll see then if there's someone. There we go. Anne and Bill. There we go. You were sorry for holding it back the last time. Go for it, Anne and Bill. And unmute yourselves to make sure. Are you there? Yeah, I can see you up in the left-hand corner.
Can you hear me now?
Sure, there you go.
All right, thank you. I was just reflecting on your first poem, probably more than, and we just want to speak to that, I guess, speaking for myself. The first poem, the word that stuck out to me in that poem was the word autumn, which is both where we are now physically on a daily basis and also where I think I am in my life. I'm 80. And I was thinking just of the watching the trees today and watching the leaves falling gently from the tree limbs, and they're basically breaking away from the tree that's been their mother for so long, and they're in free fall. And I sort of look at my life in a similar way. I think of myself being sort of a detached leaf in sort of free fall right now. I've been had a purpose in life. It was my career when I was part of that tree. I built that up, but now I'm detached from that. I'm no longer in a career of any ability. And in some degree, I'm free, but I'm also lost. I don't know where I'm going to land specifically. I am encumbered by physical disabilities in terms of my hearing is going all to hell. And my physical body is starting to break down. So, but I do know that the leaf eventually hits the ground, and then it creates nourishment for the next generation on. The fear that I have is that I'm not sure how to collect any wisdom that I can pass on.
Well, it's a good point to make, and maybe we can hold that, because that's our process. This is not something we'll do tonight. Think of maybe a year, over a course of a year, when we will look at aspects of that you just described, Bill, some of them. You know, the change of identity, the change of like what's going on, you feel lost, of course. And so we'll explore those themes as we go down that road. So thank you so much. Who's next? Who would like to share? Because you are speaking for this collective that we are.
Francis has his hand up.
Francis, go for it, Francis. I can't see you, but go for it.
Yes, we discussed that the thread was God's working in our lives, holding the patches together that make up our lives, and that the needle that holds the thread goes through the patches to put them together. So it hurts a little bit to put the patches together, but once you wind up with a whole great big beautiful patch, a group of patches.
That's a beautiful image. Thank you so much, Francis. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Anyone else? We've heard from the east and the west, now north and south. Anyone? Just show your hand and away we will go. Go for it. It's Peggy.
Gail has her hand up.
I can see Peggy. And then who else did you say, Kathleen?
Gail.
So Peggy and then Gail.
Well, that's nice because I met with Gail, but what I wanted to share just moved me. Danny, when you, in this last conversation, what is it we're moving toward? You know, what does eldering mean in terms of how I am in the world right now? And what really comes to me is the importance of voice, and that voice that we have been censored by communities, by institutions, but perhaps more by ourselves, has an opportunity to express itself. And I'm actually on the bridge right now. I'm crossing that bridge right now to say what I need to say and not worry anymore about ruffling the feathers of people around me. And that doesn't mean that I don't speak with love, you know, in gentleness, but it's time, I can feel it, to say this is not right. Even the way I'm spoken to by my adult children, this is not right. And this is the voice, I think, that needs to be coming out from ourselves collectively as we begin to understand and deepen our relationship to life itself.
That's so well put, Peggy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can see people nodding, resonating with what you're saying. One more is Gail. That's what Gail.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Well, so thank you to all my Grange friends who are here. And I'm about to turn 87, which is getting pretty ripe, really. And thinking of what Bill said, for me, one of the beauties of this time in life is that I don't need to be important or productive or on time or anything. That the future is going to play out as it does, but the future isn't my concern. The day is my concern. And in terms of the thread, the first, I sing in a choir, and we're singing, the words start, love, oh love, that will not let me go. And for me, that is the thread that I met God when I was about 8, and she hasn't let me go. I mean, it's just, I can't get away. And that's been such a blessing and very frustrating sometimes. But I ended up a Presbyterian minister, which is an elder in that church. And so I've been an elder now for about almost 50 years. And it's great to be free.
What a wonderful note to hold, that tension between aging and eldering, which is what we've been exploring just a little bit on the surface. Thank you so much, Gail. I couldn't help but think of the English poet Francis Thompson and the Hound of Heaven that some of us are familiar with.
Right.
I fled him down the nights and down the days and down the pathways of the years. Sort of highlighting that what we call God so naively and simplistically is such a powerful force in the world, not us.
So it's not us holding on to the thread, but the thread has got us.
The thread maybe has us. Well, thank you so much for this stage. Clearly, we've so much more to share. Already there's maybe some agreement, but also some differences, even a little tension, I would imagine, I hope, because it's not all the same for all of us. And there's different emphases that we have. I mean, what's our responsibility in the face of situations like the Middle East? What about speaking our own voice here now? What about, not slowing down? What about, and so on? What about keeping ourselves healthy and building our earth together? There's so many things I know that are there for us to probe. But we've started a conversation. I hope that this structure, you become more familiar with it, because I think you will see and appreciate that it really is a way of being engaged, even if it's only in the small group and then occasionally in this larger group. And you can hear, hopefully, our collective voice emerging. And that's what we want to step into in this third stage. You remember I said mindfulness dialogue, the model is connecting, exploring, and now discovering. Those 3 stages happen in every good conversation. When you connect and you explore without trying to convince the other person, you find yourself saying, I never thought of it like that, but that's the spirit of discovering, mindfulness discovering. So let me reflect as a way of bringing us into this last stage. Clearly, eldering is a daunting task, or perhaps more accurately, it will take all we can give. As I noted earlier, for Erik Erikson, it is the stage of integration versus despair. I find that fascinating. That will take commitment to learning and practice, as well as good intention, if we're truly to address the challenges that aging brings. As we draw our conversation towards a close, we want to discover together how to proceed. Clearly, there's no easy answer, nor is there a one-size-fits-all for such a transformation process. But usually, I think the first step in a process of transformation that has awakened us to the truth of things is an awareness of the contradictions in our life sometimes. That this is not how we have been living, maybe. As Rilke, another favorite poet of mine, puts it, my life is not this steeply sloping hour in which you see me hurrying. And T.S. Eliot, whom I quoted earlier, would add the awareness of how my ignorance has often caused me to be part of the problems we complain about. He speaks of the awareness of things ill done and done to others harm, which once we took for exercise of virtue. Humbling. All of us part of the problem. When we think of it, when we scrape the surface, just think of that again. The awareness of things ill done and done to others harm, which once we took for exercise of virtue. A realization like this is sharpened, of course, when there is a sense of urgency. For often it's when you're about to lose something that you realize how important it is to you, which is where we are. So this is our first focus, perhaps. the realization that time is passing and there's work to be done. But then we will probably need to make space in our lives for this. A learning space, a kind of lab for experimenting with new ways. History is full of such efforts, people making space to learn how to do things differently and better. Monastic movements, alternative communities were such efforts to change not just the habits and structures of the day, but the beliefs and assumptions beneath them. That's our work. So our final question today then is, what am I going to do to address this, to promote personal integration and new structures that will reflect this? Because that came up too in our conversation. So in this final stage of our mindfulness dialogue, we will begin by pausing and making space in our hearts the way we will need to make space in our lives. So we're going to take 2 or 3 minutes to be quiet, to go back to that place, perhaps where we started and know it for the first time. So relax yourself, close your eyes if it helps. Take 3 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Now let me invite you to listen for, that's the emphasis, to listen for what you hear trying to be said. It's maybe an unusual way of putting it. Or if you like, what do you hear us beginning to say? Us beginning to say about aging and eldering. So let me hold you in this space of listening for just another minute or so, and then invite you, and we'll hear again. We won't break into breakout groups, obviously we won't have the time for that, but we'll hear from 4 voices. So if you feel moved when I call you back, then speak up, and that's how we'll pull this together. Just listen for. Even language of discovering is a little bit like, you're probably going to think this is silly, but if that is coming up for you, then probably it's not your ego. It's probably us in some ways speaking, or the thread. So let's begin. Is there a voice? Raise your hand. Jay, go for it.
What struck me as we're finishing this is finding a balance and struggling about when to let go and when to hold on, and what to let go and what to hold on.
I forgive my flippancy here, but I can't help thinking of Kenny Rogers. You got to know when to hold them. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jay. Anne and Bill, up you go. Your turn, Anne, I'd say.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, Danny. This is fabulous. I want to sort of link 2 things together, because I started thinking of the thread and looking at the thread of my life and realizing that it fundamentally has remained the same thread, but it doesn't look the same. So in some ways it does change. So, and how it changes, I think, is through integration, starting from a very, I mean, we're always integrating. We're not just doing that now. Hopefully we've been doing that our whole lives, whether we're conscious about it or not. And that if I think of a string, which is really little and thin and maybe weak at the beginning, as experiences happen and as we grow and change ourselves and integrate, that thread is getting richer and richer. It's getting thicker and stronger and maybe more beautiful. There may be a little gold thread that comes around. There may be some dark threads in there for the disappointments and the tragedies that everyone experiences, but that only makes the thread stronger. And that made a good image for me in terms of winding around me while I try to integrate myself at this age of being in the 80s. So
thank you so much, Anne.
thank you.
See a tapestry emerging out of what you're
It
saying.
is a tapestry. That's how I see it. Yes. I also thought of who was it did attachment theory, the British.
Oh, yeah.
It's not Eric Erickson, but I can't think of his name, of course, because I'm 81. But I heard him speak when really a year before he died, and he said, even though I live in England and I'm here in Hartford, Connecticut, talking to you and giving a symposium, I am on a piece of a thread that is rubber. And he said, that gives me confidence because I know no matter what I do or how I fail or how I succeed, that elastic is pulling me back to England, and I know they're there and someone's holding on to it. And it was delightful.
That is delightful.
Image.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you. So another voice. Do I see a hand up? Sue Wooden. Sue. You're muted. Just hit unmute. You're muted, Sue.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Danny. I'll get this eventually. All these things to do. First of all, what I think is trying to be said as we were all listening is that elderhood is a different country, but we still have the same passionate interest in doing what we can, as they say in the Jewish tradition, about repairing the world. And I'm not the only one who is feeling heart and soul sick about what's been I've worked in environmental issues, have worked in environmental issues for the last 40 years. And I am just at a point of despair, but I'm going to choose integration instead of despair. And also the endless wars and the suffering of this, particularly the children. And we feel these things at a deep cellular level and a soul level. And it's good to be with others who don't think we're strange or, anyway, we've lived through the same things. I turned 80 in April and then had my first brain surgery in July. And so it's like, this was definitely different. And trying to learn a different, as you said, Danny, a different way of to live differently, to learn how to live differently and come home to myself. And at the same time, do what I can. And I know we all have varying issues related to some of those same things, health issues and other issues that we can't do. And as we can't live as we lived before, but we can still live. And how we create that together, I just feel tremendously inspired just by hearing the voices, just not from everyone yet even, but just the voices we've heard tonight. And my new best friend, Joy Degman, she and I were partners in our breakout room, and it was like we knew each other. We've known each other forever. So thank you to you and Sister Kathleen for getting this all coordinated. And I look forward to being in a breakout room with everyone else.
Oh, thank you so much, Sue. Thank you so much. One more. Who's the last for this evening? Voice. One more. Do I see anyone? Do I see a hand? Go ahead. Is it Jessie? Jossie. Speak up. Yeah, you're on mute. You're muted still. There we go.
Okay. What I hear all of you saying is to live. Is live. We have a life to live. And I don't think that we think of tomorrow and the day after. I think of living the now. And more than ever, the now has been more present to me, and I suppose to a lot of us, than before. And that's a change in that wonderful thread as you're talking about. The now is something that we don't want to waste. And the now is something that we want to walk through intentional.
Well, what
and,
a great, yeah.
and
Go ahead, Josie.
And joyful. I think that we want to experience and to be joyful about life. And of course, all the things that are not about life upset us. And the now would be, okay, I got to write to my congressman, okay, or congresswoman. Or the now may be, I got to go to a march. Or the now may be, I'm going to go out and do the garden, because the garden brings me and brings the community something to look at and be joyful about and be happy about. Oh, I'm going to go and see Beth. I got to go up to Connecticut. It's time to go up to Connecticut and visit my friend Beth. So that's the now. I live on the now, and the now is important.
Thank you, Josie. What a great note, I think, to hold this on this discovery stage. Let me just bring some closing comments, and then we will direct us towards this ongoing conversation. T.S. Eliot again, we shall not cease from exploration. And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time, over and over again for the first time. Knowing the place for the first time means knowing what every child knows instinctively, that life simply is, as Josie is pointing out, that all is grace, that success is simply knowing how to live in the grace of the world. That's why we're calling this eldering in grace. But this knowing requires ceaseless exploration. We shall not cease from exploration that generates ever new discoveries. Perhaps the grace part of eldering highlights the fact that we control nothing fundamental, that we are lived by greater forces and ultimately by the source of life itself. What the river says, that is what I say. The thread we follow is surely related to this source. So it makes sense to hold on to and follow this thread, for this surely is our way home. So clearly this is not the end of our conversation, rather it is the beginning. And to help the conversation continue, we encourage you a couple of things. To make space in your day, if only for a few minutes, and perhaps journal your thoughts on this unfolding challenge, issue, opportunity. 2, find yourself a buddy or two, maybe from this group or not, to share your thoughts with and to share any resources, books, articles, videos, podcasts, so we can build a library. On our part, Kathleen and Carlos and myself, we will make the recording of this conversation available on YouTube so that you can point out to people and go listen in again yourself for things you might have missed. I will try to create a podcast of sorts based on our exchange here today for wider sharing, maybe in a week or 2. And sometimes it will take the form of interviews of people who have done some fascinating work into eldering and its implications. And we'll invite you to keep your own conversation, your comments going. We'll provide a platform for that. And we'll provide a series of gatherings like this on some of the themes that we touched on indirectly today, like time, like suffering, like purpose, like mortality, like joy.
Yeah.
So to finish here today, we're going to ask you to begin our continuing process by responding to this final question. What do you feel here in you, in us? And we're going to invite you, just stay online if you wish. We're going to stop our Zoom, but take 3 or 4 minutes now when it's still fresh in your heart to write this down whatever comes up for you. And your comments will be anonymous if you need them to be, but they will be part of our emerging we story. We're going to build our story out of this process over the coming weeks and months. So you can send your comments to this address, contact at, wait for it, a new global we, all one word, contact at a new global we.com. Contact at a new global we, all one word, a new global we.com. So thank you for participating. Let me hand it back to our gracious host, our dear, dear friend to so many of us, Kathleen.
Danny, thank you so much. And thank you to the dozens and dozens of us who shared this wonderful venture, this inaugural venture into what someone has called the new land of eldering. I've put Danny's contact in the chat so that you can look at it, perhaps, if you wanted to capture it again. And let's just invite our friends to join us for our next gathering, which we'll always try to keep to the first Monday of the month. And I'll be sending you e-blasts. And I just want to say how blessed we are that we have not only someone as skilled in understanding human nature as Danny is, to be facilitating our gathering, but to have the poet's tongue to help us open to this new horizon. Danny, thank you. Carlos, thank you. And to the nearly 65 of us who were on here this evening, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.
This is beautiful start of the season. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, and wonderful to see so many familiar faces and new faces. Hi, Ronnie. Hi, Gail. Hi to everyone.
Good night, Ronnie.
How are you doing?
Good night, Carlos.
Hey, Danny, I just wanted to, Kathleen, I just wanted to stay. I just got on late and I wanted to say hello.
Oh, hi, Doug. I saw you coming on. You don't actually qualify for this, Doug, this group.
No, as someone said earlier, at least
We're happy to have you.
Eldering starts when you're a child. It starts at the very beginning. It's a ripening process.
Yes, that's
Very much
true.
agree.
True. You're more than welcome. I'm teasing you.
Doug is an old soul.
We used to go to Danny and I to death cafes together. And it was so fun. I mean, I think I was the youngest one every time by a generation or two. But as Danny said, it's about living, it's about life and embracing every moment.
Every moment. Thank you, Doug. It's good to see your lovely face.
Good to see you
Night,
too.
friends.
Night all.
Thank you, Carlos. And
Thank you,
Danny.
Kathleen. Wonderful job, Danny.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Night, Peggy. Thanks, love.
Delightful.
Catherine. Danny, thank you.
Oh, no, it was wonderful. I was so looking forward to this, as Carlos knows, to putting so much kind of spiritual energy, because it felt so important, in all kinds of ways that I can hardly articulate. We are a strange generation, these boomers, but
More to come.
more to come. More to come.
Great energy, really great energy. Wonderful, wonderful, Danny.
So good.
Good night, chums.
Good night, everybody. Be in touch, Carlos. Be in touch, Kathleen.
Good night.